Hello everyone. So today I was asked to make a video on antibiotic resistance. And we ask, what is antibiotic resistance? So according to the CDC, antibiotic resistance happens when germs like bacteria and fungi develop the ability to defeat drugs designed to kill them. That means the germs are not killed and continue to grow. Antibiotic resistance is accelerated by the misuse and overuse of antibiotics, as well as poor infection prevention and control. Scientifically, we learned in our weekly lecture video that when a certain bacteria that is resistant to a few different antibiotics is then mixed with a bacteria that is sensitive to the same few antibiotics in question, through horizontal gene transfer, the sensitive strain becomes resistant. That occurs when genetic exchange happens between bacteria and has multiple gene resistance with multiple different antibiotics with bacteria that don't have the same gene resistant genes. Horizontal gene transfer makes it possible for resistant strains to duplicate more rapidly and spread. That happens by their multiple gene resistant plasmids passing to the bacterial cells that do not have that same resistance plasmids. They can keep replicating the transferred plasmids, and that then creates multiple drug resistance. One very important way to avoid this is by washing your hands. If nothing else, the current pandemic that we're in should have taught us all that. So infections caused by antibiotic resistance germs are difficult and sometimes impossible to treat. In most cases, antibiotic resistance infections require extended hospital stays, additional follow-up doctor visits, costly and toxic alternatives. Antibiotic resistance does not mean that the body is becoming resistant to antibiotics. Rather, it means that the bacteria have become resistant to the antibiotics designed to kill them. How antibiotic resistance emerged, according to the CDC, is when penicillin, which was the first commercialized antibiotics, was discovered in 1928 by Alexander Fleming. Ever since, there have been discoveries and acknowledgement of resistance alongside the discovery of new antibiotics. In fact, germs that will look for ways to survive to resist new drugs. More and more germs are sharing their resistance with one another, making it harder for us to keep up. Also, according to WHO, the best ways that we can prevent the control of the spread of antibiotic resistance, as individuals, we can change the way we use the prescribed antibiotics. We should only be using antibiotics when prescribed by a certified health professional, and never demand antibiotics from any healthcare worker that says you don't need them, because ultimately your doctors and healthcare professionals know what your body needs. So you should definitely be listening to what they are saying. Always take your antibiotics as directed. If it states on the bottle to finish all, you need to finish them all. And also never share your antibiotics with other people, because their body may need a different type of antibiotic, which you don't have, and the one that you have can't provide the same benefits. So even as new medicines are developed, without behavior change, antibiotic resistance will remain to be a major threat. Behavior changes are also a good preventative measure that we can take to avoid antibiotic resistance. And those include reducing the spread of infections through vaccination, hand washing, practicing safer sex, good food hygiene, and just take precautions when we can. The consequences of the spread of antibiotic resistance include infections that can no longer be treated by first-line antibiotics, which leads to more expensive medicines that must be used, a longer duration of illness and treatment, often in hospitals. That increases the healthcare costs, and that can create an economic burden on families and societies. And antibiotic resistance is also putting the achievements of modern medicine at risk. Organ transplantations, chemotherapy, surgeries, such as cesarean sections, those become more dangerous without effective antibiotics for the prevention of treatment infections. So we really need to be careful and make sure that we're doing everything that we can to avoid antibiotic resistance. The CDC states that each year in the US, at least 2.8 million people are infected with antibiotic-resistant bacteria or fungi, and that ultimately results in the death of nearly 35,000 people every year. So that's pretty dangerous. Many medical advances are dependent on the ability to fight infections without with using antibiotics. And like I had mentioned a little bit previously, that could be including joint replacements, organ transplantations, chemotherapy, treatment of other chronic illnesses such as diabetes, asthma, arthritis. And antibiotic resistance makes treating those ailments difficult and sometimes impossible. So antibiotic resistance is a serious topic.